know, this day and age, there's one company you just can't say the name of without putting the word F-U-C-K in front of it. And I think we know what company we're talking about.
But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, Konami was one of the best and well-respected video game companies out there, not only with its original IPs, but also with its licensed titles. While Capcom made some nice games using properties from Disney, Konami did the same thing for Warner Brothers. Great examples include The Adventures of Batman and Robin and Tiny Toon Adventures. And not to mention the subject of this episode, Animaniacs.
A quick summary. Animaniacs was a skit-based animated series from the 90s that was produced by Steven Spielberg nonetheless. While it did have a large cast of characters, the stars of the show were Yakko, Wakko, and Dot, the Warner Brothers and the Warner sister. 3 crazy siblings that lived in the Warner Brothers tower on the Warner Brothers lot, where they got into all kinds of hijinks. The show was a real nice throwback to classic Looney Tunes style slapstick comedy, but it also had a surprisingly good amount of heart too. Now let's take a look at these video games that are based upon it. First up, the Super Nintendo.
The story of this game is that Pinky and the Brain, the villainous mice duo bent on world domination, have stolen the script to a new movie, and the CEO has asked the Warners to retrieve it. You control Yakko, Wakko, and Dot as you play through 4 studios, which can be played in any order. Each studio contains multiple stages. Most of them are 3-dimensional platformers that utilize 3 lanes that you can jump back and forth between. Others are chase levels, like the minecart, where you have to avoid objects while on a track. And each level finishes up with a boss fight. Along the way, you'll have to find pages to the movie script hidden throughout the levels. Now you can beat the game without them, but you'll get the bad ending if you do. Once all 4 studios are defeated, the final studio is unlocked, which is a boss rush mode, before facing off against Pinky and the Brain in the final confrontation. As you can see, the graphics and animation are well done here, and the characters move fluently through their controls. In this game, you play as one Warner at a time, while the others follow. You can switch between them, although we don't really see the point as they all control identically. But you do have the ability to form a ladder with them in order to reach higher platforms, so there's that at least. The basic movements are jumping, pushing, throwing, and dashing, which is performed by pressing the dash button once to wind up, and again to take off. Gotta admit, this took some time to get used to. The game is very meta, just like the show it represents. Each studio contains parodies of famous movies such as Jaws, Indiana Jones, King Kong, even The Never-Ending Story. The best one, however, is the Sci-Fi Studio, which has callbacks to Alien, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and of course, Star Wars.
Yeah, I think George Lucas is gonna sue somebody.
Nah, he and Steve are friends. I'm sure he was cool with it. Now here's the secret to beating this game. Okay, are you ready? You have to die a lot. If ever there was a game that was all about pattern recognition, it's this one right here. It's all about determining when to move, where to position your character, and when to jump to avoid obstacles. And the only way to do that is to suffer one defeat after another, replaying the stage repeatedly until you commit it to memory. It can get so irritating when the only way to pass an obstacle is to die to it and remember to dodge it on your next run. A great example of this is the start of the Fantasy Studio level, where you are chasing the White Rabbit on flying broomsticks. You have to keep your eye on him and match his movements, because if you don't, you will run smack into a tree. Look, I know this is a common trope in video games, but that doesn't make it any less annoying, especially when the gameplay is centered around trial and error. This leads to the most frustrating part of this whole experience. What is it? 3 words. 1 hit deaths. Yep, you get hit once, and you lose a life. Most of the time. I don't know, it's kind of picky. More often than not, you will get a life taken away by one touch. This can make some areas feel like a real grind. You see? Get used to this password screen, because as I said, you're gonna die! The password system allows you to continue where you left off without replaying previous studios that you have already beaten. If you lose the Warner that you're playing as, one of the others will take their place. So yeah, they count as the lives in this game. Lose them all, and it's game over. There are continues in this game, and when you use one, you will start at the last stage instead of the beginning of the studio. However, you start with only one Warner, the one you ended with the last time around. Yeah, that's fair. Now you can get more continues via the slot machine that is on the bottom of the screen. You activate it by collecting coins throughout the game and operate it by using the L button. You can also get temporary invisibility and bring back your lost siblings if you hit the jackpots. So collect as many of those coins as you can, because it can get pretty generous at times and give you a ton of continues. And you'll need every bit of them. Another thing is that even though the CEO wants the Warners to collect the movie script, apparently Ralph the security guard didn't get the memo, as he will appear at random times and try to snag you. And if he does, you lose a life, and he'll probably lose his job. And we swear there are some depth issues with the platforming, where we were sure we were lined up properly, only to end up missing our target completely. We're not saying this game is overly hard. It is possible to beat it in one sitting, it's just that you'll be doing this a lot. One nice thing, however, is that in between studios, you can go to the water tower and attempt to free any of your siblings from captivity, so that at least can give you some relief. Now, this game is not bad, and it does contain things that we did enjoy about it. The graphics are nice, the music is a joy to listen to, and the humor is spot on, as it did make us laugh out loud on several occasions. But the strange gameplay design choices here made playing this to us less enjoyable and more of a chore in the long run. But, at the very least, the game is worth a laugh or two.
Well, moving on, let's check out and see what the Sega Genesis version has to offer. The game opens up with a great cutscene where Wacko is asking Yakko why they are there. Well, in a video game, since they are, cartoon characters. Oh, this is gonna be fun. The plot here is that the Warners have decided to go into business by opening up an antique shop. Slow day for the Warners, I think. So, they decided to go around the Warner Brothers lot and collect famous items from the studios. As in the Super Nintendo version, there are 4 studios that can be completed in any order, before tackling the final level. Here, there is an adventure stage, a science fiction stage, a western stage, and our personal favorite, the horror stage, which features references to Jason Voorhees and a little wink and a nod to Castlevania. Remember? Konami! The beginning of each stage starts with a cutscene featuring the Warners bantering back and forth. The jokes, admittedly, were a little hit and miss. Some produced a chuckle, while others kinda missed the mark. Now, don't quote us here, but for the Super Nintendo game, we just feel they were trying way too hard to capture the random looniness of the cartoon. But in this one, it's just straightforward simple platforming. You start off with 3 lives, and you can tank a few hits before you lose one. Along the way, you can pick up extra lives and food that can restore a lost hit point. Not to mention, stars for points. Well, that is if you really care about that sort of thing. I don't know why you should. Points haven't been relevant since the 80s. You again control one of the Warners at a time, while the other 2 follow, and you can switch out between them. But in this game, it actually makes sense because they have a unique ability and you will have to use them all in order to advance. Yakko actually has 2. Makes sense, I guess, being the eldest. He has a paddle ball that he can stun enemies with, and because he is the tallest, he can push boxes back and forth. Wacko has a mallet for destroying obstructions and activating switches, while Dot can blow kisses at people to get them to lend a hand. Ah, Dot, using her feminine wilds. But her ability here is more situational, so most of the time you're going to be either playing as either Yakko or Wacko. There is also no dash button in this game, so you will just be strutting around all over the place. The controls, admittedly though, do feel a bit slippery, especially when you try to jump on high platforms. Almost like there's a little too much momentum going on. We found ourselves angling back in midair to make sure that we didn't slip right off of a platform into a bottomless pit. The graphics and animation are top-notch, right on par with the Super Nintendo counterpart. Both games did a very admirable job translating the look of the cartoon to the 16-bit format. And the music for the Sega Genesis version is outstanding. In fact, the music in this game would not sound out of place in a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and to us, that is high praise. As you go through the studio, you will run into some challenges along the way, such as disappearing platforms, boss fights, and puzzle solving that will take a little figuring out, especially this one in the western stage. This one took a little while to solve, but overall, the game is not very difficult, despite being able to adjust the difficulty in the options menu. And the game also has the password system and unlimited continues. There is also a time limit in order to complete the stage, but along the way, you can collect clocks to increase it, and when you die and have to restart the stage you were on, the clock will reset to full, so it never really does become an issue at all. The final stage can give a pretty decent challenge. which will require you to figure out your way around death traps, work fast to get past explosions, and dodge the incoming fire from an attack helicopter? Holy crap! Warner Brothers isn't playing around anymore! They want these Warners dead! And naturally, we wrap things up with the final boss fight with, who else, Pinky and the Brain. For us, the fun factor on the Sega Genesis version was just higher than the Super Nintendo one. It definitely has its flaws, like this part, but overall, it was just more satisfying as an experience. With its bouncy tunes, good graphics, and straightforward gameplay, neither game is a masterpiece, but hey, they were both competent adaptations to the beloved animated series that everybody loves so much. Well, there you guys have it. Another episode of Super Nintendo vs. Sega Genesis. I'm your host, William Morris.
I'm your co-host, Eugene Morris.
Now, before you go, please sure to go in the comments and tell us which game do you think is the best. Well, Gene, it's that time again.
Make fun of Final Fantasy fans?
No! Later. Now, it's the time for all of you to hit that huge big red subscribe button right down below. And also, while you're doing that, check out the playlists over there. Ooh, look, game reviews that you guys know exist, Tales of Retrospective, which we promise is not dead, the speedruns over there, which are also awesome and get a lot of really cool views, the Sega Genesis vs. SNES, hey, you happen to be watching that one right now, the ending of it. And look, you can follow our Twitter, Facebook, and all that other stuff. So, what are you doing? If you're seeing this part of the video, you should have already clicked something by now. Come on, click something. Hit, especially that one. Yeah, click that, right there.